The cold wind brushed against the tall glass windows of La Mer, one of the most luxurious restaurants in the city. Inside, soft piano music floated through the air, mingling with the warm scent of roasted duck and truffle sauce. The guests were dressed in elegant coats and shimmering gowns, their laughter echoing like polished crystal. Among them sat Mr. Thomas Whitaker, a man whose wealth could buy nearly anything, except perhaps the thing he didn't know he was missing. Thomas was a self-made millionaire. From sleeping in a cramped apartment to owning a chain of luxury hotels, he had conquered everything the world admired: money, reputation, and influence. Yet, his eyes carried a quiet fatigue, the kind that success couldn't wash away. That evening, he dined alone at his favorite table by the window, enjoying the city lights while pushing a half-eaten steak around his plate. Outside, the city was a different world. The sidewalks glistened with rain, and the cold bit through thin jackets. People hurried past each other, lost in their own worries. Among them was a young woman named Emily. Her clothes were worn, her shoes patched and muddy, and her fingers trembled from the chill. She wasn't homeless, not exactly, but life had been cruel lately, her job lost, her mother sick, and her rent overdue. She survived on scraps, kindness, and faith that tomorrow might be gentler. Emily passed by the glowing restaurant window and paused. Through the glass, she saw warmth, light, and people who looked untouched by the cold she felt in her bones. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but more than that, she felt invisible, just another shadow in a world that didn't care to notice. She was about to walk away when her eyes landed on the man sitting alone, his plate still half full. Something in his expression, loneliness hidden behind elegance, made her stop. She hesitated, biting her lip. She had never begged before, not once. But desperation had a way of humbling pride. Slowly, she opened the door. The waiter by the entrance frowned, ready to stop her, but she whispered quickly, "Please, I just need to speak to that man." The waiter sighed, but something in her voice, soft yet steady, made him step aside. Emily walked toward Thomas's table, every eye in the restaurant turning toward her. The murmurs started immediately. Who is she? What is she doing here? Thomas looked up, confused, as she stood before him. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, her hair damp from the rain, but her eyes, clear, deep, and painfully sincere, met his without hesitation. May I have your leftovers, sir?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling slightly. The room fell silent. Thomas blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. "My leftovers?" he repeated. She nodded, her hands clasped together. "I haven't eaten in 2 days. I saw your plate, and I thought maybe you wouldn't mind." For a moment, Thomas felt an uncomfortable mix of pity and embarrassment. All his life, he'd been approached by people who wanted money, favors, or business deals, but never someone who simply asked for food. The waiter moved forward, ready to escort her out, but Thomas raised his hand. "No, it's all right." He looked back at the woman. "What's your name?" "Emily," she said softly. "Emily," he repeated, as if testing the name. "Sit down." She hesitated, glancing around at the shocked faces of other diners. "Sir, I don't mean to disturb." "Sit," he said again, gentler this time. She slowly slid into the seat across from him, her eyes darting between the plate and his face. He signaled to the waiter. "Bring her a fresh meal. And hot tea." The waiter's eyebrows shot up, but he nodded and left. Emily looked confused. "You don't have to do that, sir. The leftovers would have been enough." "I know," Thomas said, his voice low. "But no one deserves leftovers when they can have warmth." Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Thank you." As she ate, Thomas watched her carefully. There was something fragile about her, but also strong, like a candle flame that refused to go out despite the wind. She ate slowly, almost shyly, murmuring thanks between bites. "Do you have anyone with you?" he asked after a while. My mother, she replied. She's sick. I'm trying to take care of her, but I lost my job a month ago. I've been looking for work, anything at all, but it's been hard. Thomas felt a pang in his chest. For years, he had surrounded himself with people who wanted him for his money, and yet here sat a girl who wanted nothing but kindness. When she finished, she folded her hands, her eyes lowering. Thank you, sir. You don't know what this means. He studied her face for a moment before speaking. Emily, would you allow me to help you? She blinked, startled. Help me? I could offer you a job. My hotels always need people who care, people who are honest. Her eyes widened. You'd really do that? I would, he said simply. Tears welled up in her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say yes, he said with a faint smile. She nodded, unable to speak. That night, he gave her his card and instructions to meet him at his office the next morning. As she stepped out into the cold again, something inside her felt lighter, as if the city lights had grown warmer. For Thomas, however, that brief encounter stirred something he hadn't felt in years, a reminder of what it meant to care. The next morning, when Emily arrived, neatly dressed in the same worn clothes but with a spark of hope in her eyes, he felt an inexplicable sense of calm. Weeks turned into months. Emily began working at one of his hotels, first as a cleaner, then as an assistant. She was quick, humble, and kind to everyone, no matter their rank. The staff adored her, and the guests often mentioned her in their reviews, describing her as the girl with a heartwarming smile. Thomas found excuses to visit that particular hotel more often. He told himself it was business, but he knew better. He admired her sincerity, her quiet strength, and how she brought life into the dull corridors of his company. Slowly, his loneliness began to fade. One evening, he visited again, this time without his usual entourage. Emily greeted him at the lobby, surprised but happy to see him. Mr. Whittaker, she said warmly. You're here late. He smiled. I wanted to see how things were going. And maybe have dinner with my favorite employee. Her cheeks flushed. I'd be honored. They went to a small cafe nearby, nothing fancy, just a cozy place with wooden chairs and soft light. Over soup and bread, they talked for hours. Thomas told her stories of his youth, of the nights he slept hungry, dreaming of success. Emily listened with genuine interest, not admiration for his money but respect for his struggle. When she spoke about her mother's recovery, thanks to the steady income she now had, Thomas felt something shift in him. For the first time in decades, he laughed freely, without thinking about his schedule, meetings, or profits. As the night ended, Emily said softly, You know, sir, the night I met you, I thought you were going to turn me away. But when you looked at me, it was like, you actually saw me. No one had done that in a long time. Thomas met her gaze, his throat tight. That night, Emily, when I looked into your eyes, something changed in me too. I'd spent so many years building walls around my life, thinking money was enough. But your kindness, reminded me what it means to be human. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she smiled. Maybe that's the miracle, sir. He chuckled softly. Maybe it is. Time went on, and their bond grew deeper, not through wealth or charity, but through understanding. Thomas sponsored her education, encouraging her to study hotel management. Emily, in turn, brought light into his quiet world, reminding him that kindness was the greatest investment of all. Years later, at a grand charity gala hosted by Whittaker Hotels, Emily stood beside Thomas, not as an employee anymore, but as his partner in every sense. Together, they had started a foundation to help the homeless and unemployed, giving people a second chance just like she once had. As the crowd applauded, Emily looked at Thomas and whispered, Do you remember the night I asked for your leftovers? He smiled, eyes glistening. How could I forget? That was the night my heart stopped being empty. She squeezed his hand gently. You gave me more than food that night, you gave me hope. And you, he said softly, gave me life. Under the chandelier's glow, surrounded by people whose lives they had touched, Emily and Thomas shared a quiet moment of gratitude, a reminder that sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunder or light. Sometimes, they begin with a single, trembling voice asking, "May I have your leftovers, sir?" And when compassion answers, hearts are fed in ways the world can never measure. Because kindness, when given freely, turns strangers into saviors, and sometimes, it even heals the souls that give it.